All right, let's continue with the one that we've done before, which is how to use debugger, all right? Debugging your application, okay? So if we get, let's click on the standard editor and let's take a look at the view controller. Usually debugging the code usually happens inside your program. So I'm gonna define a few variables here. So I'm gonna say var x equal, I'm gonna make it int equals 0 and var y equal okay double, and then I'm going to make it equal to 0. Okay, couple of variables that we defined in here. All right, now in the function here I'm going to also define some variables here. Var z, okay, it is double and it is equal, we'll say you can make it equal 0 for practice, and then we can do var, not var, we'll say z equal double or txt, I don't know, do we have txt1.text, just what like we did before, okay? And I'm gonna make it equal, we're gonna make that double, we're gonna cast it to double. Okay. And I'm gonna, of course, because this is an optional, so we're gonna do that. And then you say label1.text equal the value entered value is gonna be too big, and put z, for example. Okay, that's all we're doing. Now there's got an error here, so again click on this and then fix that. Okay, all right. So with debugging, usually the logic is a lot more complex than this, and then you're actually trying to find where the program is crashing. I'm going to make this program crash, and I'll show you how we use debugger to find this error. Simple program, but I think this is enough to get you started. So if I run this application, the one we worked on before, you'll notice that if I didn't enter anything here and I click on this button, which basically gonna call this code, your application will crash. It says unexpected nil while unwrapping variable. Well, this is great. It's telling you where the error is, right? In some cases, you don't know where the error is, but you have it like you're suspecting the error is here. So what do? Now the application stops. How do I check what's going on, what's happening? What you can do, you can, for example, I'm going to show you a couple things here. I'm going to say txt1.text equal 0. All right. So debugging is you usually use what we call a breakpoint. So if you want to see where the program, what does the program do first? So you can click on here, you put on this line, you can put a breakpoint. You can also put a breakpoint here. You can also put a breakpoint here. What are these breakpoints? Breakpoint means when you run the program, stop here. So I can examine my code and find out what's happening. So now if I run it, just to show you the sequence of events, where did it stop? Now, some students, they see this and they get scared and they see this is actually your application crashed. It didn't crash. You actually told it I wanted to be here. Now, to show the debug window, here we're only showing the output. I can show the debug too. All right, I'll talk about this in a minute. But what can you do with this? You can say, okay, I want to go to the next line. Well, there is no next line here. So, but if I click on the next line, or I click on run. Run means continue until the next breakpoint. Since we have in this function, we only have one line. If I continue or step, see now it's going to the next line, step, it takes me to another code, to the deeper level, or you can just simply continue. So now it changed that to 0. All right, what about these other ones? So if I click on this buttons, now it's gonna take me to this breakpoint. And then this breakpoint, I can examine exactly what's happening in my code. So if I click on this, it took me to the next line. And notice here are your variable lists. So I have something that is local to the function. That means it's here and it's this function. And you have something in self, which is the class as a whole. Now I defined 2 variables in the class. So if I click on this, you'll see that you have X and Y, and then their type and their value. Z is 0 right now because we have defined it and we assign it to 0. But you have other objects. We call these are objects. These are simple data types, but these are object. Complex data type has more stuff in it. But the idea behind it, now I know what's happening in my program. Now, if I wanted to continue, and it took me to the next line, because I made it equal to 0, it's not a blank anymore, so this was successful. This was the conversion of 0 into this text field. Now you can see that when I put that in here, it's actually giving me, when I do this, highlight it, it'll give me the value of that expression. Okay? Or actually, didn't do that, but it should have. Okay, so this here is actually converted, and it'll give you the value of Z, which is 0. Okay, and this is local. So now you can go to the next line, and what's happening in your code, and then it'll update the screen, it'll update that label. Well, you can't see it because it's too small. All right. I can show you quickly by making that main storyboard big. All right, so and then not storyboard, the label big, so you can actually see what's happening. All right, so that is how you set the breakpoint. But what about, okay, I'm happy, I know where the error is, I want to remove a breakpoint. Again, you can go to see it's going here. Okay, I'm fine, I'm going to make it run this time. Okay, got to 0, did that, it's there, and then you can run it again, and then you got that label 1, the value is 0.0. All right, so if you don't want these breakpoints anymore, I know I don't need to be here because things are okay, and delete that, and you know what, I'm gonna delete this too, okay? Delete this, assigning it to 0. But I'm gonna leave this breakpoint, see what happens. So here, you go to the code, and now it says label, you don't have 0, you have a blank, it's gonna crash, so we click on the button, it's sitting there, right? Notice that Z, when you first define it, it's not 0, it's some odd number to the power of negative 310. And that's the problem with double and float. You never actually get a 0 unless you assign it a 0. Okay, so you gotta be careful. That's why we make it equal to 0. So what happens is that you do next. So now it became 0, fine, it's okay, and this is where it's going to crash. Okay, it's saying, okay, you have a problem here. This operation gave you a nil, and you cannot unwrap a nil. These are optional variable. What happened is that this is empty, and you're trying to take an empty thing and then convert it to a double, and that's what's causing the problem. So how do I fix it? There's 2 ways to do it. The basic way to do it, you can compare, for example, say if txt 1.text does not equal to blank. Do this, but there's no guarantee that they will enter a number unless you change the keyboard, okay, and you force it to be a number only. So one way this would work, okay, but you can go back in here and then say, okay, in the view in this main storyboard, this is a number. I know this is a number, so I'm going to allow only number. You go to here and then you select from the property. This is numbers only, decimal pad. All right. So the only way it can crash if they don't enter anything. So if we saw that, okay, now if I click on this, nothing happens, right? Because I said if it's not equal to empty. But if I click on this, I get some numbers, I can enter numbers, and I click on that, and then that label is 55. So okay. So that is if you're forcing it to only, if you have expecting a number, you're forcing it only to be a number. The other way you can do this, instead of doing that, is that you use the optional assignment. So you can say, and what this is would be a better way of fixing it. You say, if let A, for example, equal this, and you don't need to unwrap it anymore because it's going to give you a nil or not. This is going to give you an optional variable saying if A is equal, if let A equal to this, that means there's actually a value here. So what do? I take Z and I make it equal to A, and the rest is the same. Okay, this is another way to deal with optional variable. All right, so you check if this is the conversion was successful, and then you assign it to a variable, temporary variable A. Then you take in the code you assign A to that Z to A, and then you process the same thing. So either one is fine. The other one is more accurate, but the first one is also an option. Okay, you could do the same thing. Now, if I go back to the main storyboard, and it doesn't matter what type of keyboard you're showing, I can select keep it as a default, and then if you run it, you will see that your application will not crash, even though you're showing the default application. Even if you type in non-numeric value and you try to do it, it will not crash. Okay, so that is another option. All right. Okay, if you want to do a little bit more, you can always do this in your code and do else. Then you can display an error message in the label 1, for example. Label 1.text invalid value. Okay, and that would guarantee that it will never crash because of error in the error in entering the data. All right, that is it for basic troubleshooting. See here, invalid value. If you enter some number, and then you'll be happy. Okay. This is it for the basic debugging and troubleshooting. The last thing I'm going to just mention, sometimes you don't know what the error is, and the best thing to do is that you copy this error, go online, copy paste, and I guarantee you 9 out of 10, even more, I was able to find my solution. All right. Hopefully that helped you, and at least to get you starting with debugging your application. I'll see you in the next video.